And welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler, buddy. How you doing tonight?
It's a Tuesday night, man. We are coming off a dub. I'm tired. I haven't shaved this week due to numerous things going around my house here,
There you go.
but doing good, man. How about yourself tonight?
Man, it's been a few days of recovery, but I'm getting back in the swing of things now. We got a good Tuesday under the belt. Monday was a little rough, but what can we do?
What can you do? Well, obviously, before we get into the recap, Mr. Siegler, let's go ahead and hear Sieg's adventure in the Berg on Saturday.
Yeah, I ended up taking my son with me to the game. We had a good trip in. Hit a little traffic there just before 2:20 on 81. So that slowed us up a little bit. Did a little tailgating. Took my son up to Hokie Village for a bit. He got some photos with the cheerleaders, which eventually made the official video, the post game vid. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the 10-second mark approximately. It was pretty.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
pretty
Check out
sweet.
10 seconds. My kids there hanging out with the cheerleaders, so that was pretty nice. He got a picture with the Hokie birds. So um, did a little bit more tailgating, ate some food, hit the game, found my seats, jumped to Sandman, and
Yes,
then we proceeded to beat BC's ass for 4 quarters.
yes, we did. And apparently, the seats you got were like creme de la creme, right? Like middle up 50-yard line, about
Yeah, we're about middle.
middle.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
in East. Yeah,
And you're in East, which means if you were middle, you were probably about what, two sections from the student section, which was pretty electric Saturday night.
yeah.
Sweet,
Good
sweet.
times. It
Well,
was real good times. It was loud on our side for sure.
awesome. Always is loud on East. You gotta be careful over in West. People will shush you for no apparent reason. All right, but let's get into it. The game itself, where Mr. Siegler was at on Saturday night. It's great to be wrong sometime, ain't it, Sieg?
I love being wrong when it involves a Hokie dub.
Yes.
We can get the dub. I'm okay being wrong.
Hokies win 27-10. And, you know, let's just start it straight out and let's talk about this defense, man, because this defense is kind of reminiscing of defenses we've seen throughout our lifetime. And I'm going to tell you, it started quick. Second play of the game, Armani Chapman absolutely set the tone with that interception.
Yeah, out the gate, the roaring lane was spectacular. Like it felt like the old lane. Like right out the gate, all of a sudden punch him right in the mouth, get a turnover, get in scoring range, and then we were able to punch it in, quickly take the lead 7-0. Already they're kind of out of what they want to do.
Absolutely. And that play was great. I mean, I couldn't understand. I don't quite understand the leverage, but he essentially just rode his guy out of bounds. And Jerkovic, I don't know why he threw the ball. I mean, I don't know if it was a one read and he thought he was going to come back in or something. But when he threw it, it was almost like as soon as you saw the ball in the air, it was like if Armani can catch it, that's a pick because he played it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean he threw it short and inside when Armani had already ran his man out of bounds. So not a good throw. Whether it was a good decision or not, it was a good throw.
Absolutely. And that sort of set the whole tone for the defense the whole night. I mean, 5 sacks total on defense. The defensive line as a whole shows out. We saw Cole Nelson get on the board, CJ McCray get on the board with sacks, but obviously Garbutt flashed more than anyone. He was named the ACC Defensive Lineman of the Week. And then that picture, I don't know if you've seen it, with him carrying the lunch pail. And if you didn't know, if y'all go find this picture online, around the lunch pail is a dog collar.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know whose idea this is. I hope that David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, somebody asked that question at tomorrow's or Thursday's press conference because I want some answers because that looks nasty.
Yeah, I mean the combination is pretty sweet, and I mean I like that the defensive line is kind of getting in on their own kind of tradition here, right? I think that's going to be fun to see and see who ends up with that dog collar going forward. But Garbett, big game. He was playing. He was all over the field. He did well against the run, but he did a great job pressuring Jerkovic the entire night. Jerkovic was in hell for
He
4 quarters.
pure hell for 4 quarters. And what Garbett said after the game is he played like a dog that hasn't eaten for 3 days. And if you mess with a dog that hasn't eaten for 3 days, they will bite you. And he bit them all night long. He only got credited with 1 sack. It should have been 2 because of the one Jerkovic is running away from him and he falls down. The statistician took it away from him, which you wonder, like, what the hell? Like, the nearest man to that, they made it a rush instead of a sack, but whatever. He had 3 tackles for loss in that game as well. And, a total for Talon Garbett. So all of his tackles were for loss. He had 3 tackles, but it was just the constant pressure all night. And
He was
like
living in
already
the backfield.
oh yeah, McCray had tackles for loss. Wilford Panay with a half a sack. Pollard with half a sack. We saw Kendricks a couple times snap the ball and get up in there quick. The defensive line essentially played possessed.
Yeah. And they were going against, I think they really early on smelled blood in the water with that offensive line.
Yes.
And once they saw that, they were like, all right, we're in attack mode. We're in attack mode. They can't block us in the rush game. They're not going to be able to run the ball. Pin your ears back. Go after Jerkovic.
Absolutely. And if that wasn't good enough, 10 total tackles for loss. I mean, so not only the defensive line show up, the linebacking core showed up as well with Dax and Jaden, both Jadens, Keller and McDonald, J.R. Walker. Everybody that touched the field had some sort of impact play, it seemed. And, Brian, you went back and watched the game again. I felt like the tackling was better Saturday night because we caught more in the backfield. When you watched it not only live but then come back, did that reaffirm that the tackling improved from week 1 to week 2?
Best tackling game I've seen in at least the last 3 years.
Pittsburgh 2019?
Correct.
Last time you were in Lane.
Yep, exactly. And maybe I should go to Lane more often.
Maybe.
Maybe that's that. Maybe that's the message.
Maybe that's the key. But I think in general, we mentioned last week that it had already taken a significant step forward compared to the last 2 years. We were almost there. We left a few in the backfield last week, but still last week they were getting that 2 to 3 yards. I don't think Pat Garwo got maybe back to the line, maybe the line of scrimmage. Because obviously, when you get, and this isn't incorrect, folks, 4 total yards on 26 carries. I mean, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean that's as good as you could expect against any opponent, let alone a Power 5 conference opponent.
With the running back who had went over 1,000 yards, and I know their line is hurting, but you still see guys who get over 1,000 usually can put up something. But, I mean, absolutely nothing. I think he may have actually had – let me get it up here. He had 15 total yards.
Yep. Yeah, what, 12 carries?
10 carries.
10 carries.
1.5 per carry. So, yeah, again, it was just flying to the ball. And did the ooh go off with some of those open field tackles behind the line of scrimmage? I mean, you could hear it,
especially the one Keonta brought down the running back.
Yeah,
got a big one there. I think the one where McCray made the play out in the flat got a pretty big one.
Absolutely. So those, and the other thing, and he only had 1 tackle, but it was a big one. The screen pass where Jalen Stroman, it was no hesitancy. When Jalen Stroman came on that screen, he went straight to the ball. He didn't try to read it. It was just like, he's got the ball. I'm going to go tackle him.
Yeah, he made some good plays, and we're seeing like them mix up things on nickel. Right, we saw a lot more
Yes.
Strobin. We saw a lot more DJ Harvey this week. Obviously, we saw more Breon Murray with some coming in there to spell for Dorian Strong. So it was kind of a mix of everything in the secondary, and we got some additional reps in there, and I think that kept everyone more fresh for the later quarters there when we kind of needed that extra oomph at the end.
Well, the crazy part is you talk about Stroman and you talk about some of the guys that played nickel. So Harvey played nickel, Connor played nickel, Lawson played nickel, Jenkins played nickel, and actually J.R. Walker started the game at nickel. And it's that position flexibility, right? Where, okay, we can take Keonta here. We'll bring Jamari down. We trust Jalen on the back, where you can start mixing things up. And again, like you just mentioned, guys get to stay fresh. And that Sam linebacker spot stayed fresh all night. And I mean, to the tune of the BC offense, only 4 yards rushing, only 155 total yards offense. I mean, 3 of 18 on third and fourth downs. And I mean, right now, you look on NCAA.com, Hokies are the best third down conversion percentage defense in the country at 13%.
Yep. And when you look at it, almost a third of their total yardage came on one play to Zay Flowers.
Yeah. And that was the only big catch he had all night.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's pretty wild to think about that. But then you start digging into the data, and I know we're a couple games in, so it'll be interesting to how this goes out. But I mean, the Hokies are a top 15 passing efficiency defense. I mean, it's slowly getting there, and I think we expected, Brent Pry to improve the defense significantly. But I mean, you're talking about a defense right now, and I know we're 1-1, and losing that ODU game sucks. But you're talking about a top 5 total defense. You're talking about a top 15 scoring defense.
Yep.
It's, and we're talking about getting people down behind the line of scrimmage with the 10 on Saturday night. We've got 24 total. We've got a lot, and we're again, top 20 team tackles for loss. And as much as it was holding Zay Flowers big, I thought, if anything, Takis, once I saw how quick we were getting, I thought Takis would get some catches.
Yeah, they really didn't have – I don't know if it was just because they were playing from behind, but, we did a good job of taking him away as well. He wasn't that kind of reliable check down. He wasn't the guy that was kind of helping them move the sticks. They weren't able to get him the ball consistently. He had one catch. So, I mean, we not only shut down Flowers, but we kept them – from being able to go to any outlets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Zay Flowers, 79 yards, and the big one was 50. So he had 29 on 3 other catches. So they did the job on him. And don't get me wrong, the move he put on Dorian was nasty.
Yeah,
but
it was a good double move.
It was really a great double move. But guess what? That's when you kind of sit there and say, well, those underthrown balls suck. But in that situation, when you're putting that pressure on and he has to come back to it, instead of being a 70-yard gain or a touchdown, he had to come back to it. By that time, Dorian and Nasir Peoples got down there, leveraged him, tackled him.
Yeah, and Peoples probably had an angle on him, but he could have, if he'd have caught that in stride, he probably could have made a move on Peoples there. So him having to kind of regroup and collect it. Both of them were able to kind of wrangle him down there, which is good.
Absolutely. So defense playing lights out. It's going to be fun to see this group as guys start to mature more, as guys get more comfortable in the system, right? They've already kind of, it doesn't take much, right? You go out there and you start hitting the quarterback, picking balls off, forcing fumbles. Buy-in happens quick.
Yep.
So, and it seems like, Pry's definitely calling the defense, which, for Marv, if Pry is sitting there kind of understanding what the game plan is, Marv is getting the chance to work with his linebacker core. And again, maybe that's the reason we saw such a good step is I'm working with the linebacking core. I'm focusing on fundamentals, and we're going to see the improvement quick.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen. I mean, we thought that the linebacking core was definitely the most veteran in terms of
Mm-hmm.
experience, but we've seen such a ratchet up in play so far that I mean, it's hard not to be a little impressed. And I know it's early. I know we played a team that is a G5. We played a team that has probably one of the worst offensive lines in the ACC right now, at least.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't necessarily think that the players on that line are not talented. I think they're just not ready to play the amount of snaps they're playing
yeah,
at this point in their careers.
exactly.
They got too much youth at too many positions
Yep, and the
on that
big part
offensive line.
was the best offensive lineman, that they had did get called, basically game day couldn't play, and like you said, the defense smelled the blood in the water, but like you also say is against the quality of competition that the defense is essentially
Yep.
dominated, and that's what you want. If it's a lower team, you want to dominate them. Again, they've given up two big plays all season. Two big plays. If they keep progressing, it's going to be interesting, especially what goes on roughly 10 days from now. That's kind of going to be the two games right there are going to be those landmark of how good this defense is when they face the West Virginia offense and when they face the UNC offense. So let's just keep that in mind as we get into next week.
Yep.
All right, let's flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. Not all world offense, under 300 total yards, 284 total. And let's go talk about Grant Wells. People were screaming we should go ahead and throw in Brown, throw in other players, but he comes out and has himself a solid but an unspectacular game, which in this case is what we needed, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was really no need to, take a ton of risk as we got that big lead early. He did a good job taking care of the football, which is what he didn't do well against ODU. When we were looking at the stat line, I mean, obviously 0 interception stands out, but the thing that stood out more to me was looking at the bad balls that were thrown last week compared to what they were what we saw this week. There were some bad thrown balls, but there weren't any bad decision balls. We saw those risky misses become safe misses. And that's what I mean. That's what you want. I mean, you want some calculated risk from time to time, but you want to make sure that when you're taking those risks, you're taking those risks where it's safe to play, right?
Like the Caleb Smith throw,
Yeah,
deep shot downfield. And let's talk about that pass because that pass is going to be the ACC catch of the week. Where he put that ball, Brad Glenn won't bullshit. Grant Wells has a hell of an accurate deep ball.
yeah.
Where
He dropped it right. He dropped it right in the bucket, man.
right there, right. And the bad part is Caleb, like literally, Caleb's face mask is getting pulled. Amazingly, Caleb made the catch, which was unbelievable.
Yeah, how we didn't get a flag on that. I mean, I'm glad it came down as a catch anyway, regardless. But
Exactly.
how there wasn't a flag on that is beyond me. But yeah, I mean, that was a hell of a throw. And if we can get a couple more of those a game, then we're cooking. Then we're on to something.
Yeah.
But when we look at what he's doing, much better game. I'll take an efficient game over a 300-yard game with 3 or 4 turnovers.
Absolutely. And now because of how this game played out, we've got to mention it. What's his leash now? Because we look at his completion percentage, he's right at 61%. For what we're probably asking to do, that you say that's probably about where he should be, about where we need it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to see it right around that 65. So he's hovering in that ballpark. Obviously, it's small sample size so far. So the bad game is disproportionately helping those numbers right now. When I look at what he does in other aspects, though, I think he needs to be more decisive when a run is called or when called on the run. Thinking about when he scrambles, being a little more decisive earlier in the drop back. When it's the call run, being a little bit more decisive with where he's finding the hole, where he wants to go, and not thinking as much when it comes to those scrambles and those design runs. I feel like that's holding him back a little bit. He had a couple good runs though for us. He had one on that first drive where both guys ended up running to the flat, got out of the pocket, got about 4 or 5 yards.
Yeah.
And a couple other good runs, one for a first down on a 3rd and long. So, he had some good runs, but I'd like to see a little bit more decisiveness there.
Well,
And I think the big thing is that if he can continue to show that he's not going to hurt the offense, keep rolling with him, until rough.
yeah, absolutely. The other thing you kind of look at just the data points is he's averaging a little over 4 yards a run. And I think for who he is, that's where we need him at. He's averaging about 35 a game. I would like to see him a lot more decisive. Like one of the plays, there was a player coming, he's going to the sideline. And this is a 3rd down play. My buddy Few hits me up and said, why didn't he just turn into that versus going out? And I couldn't explain because he was close enough if he turned it in. And then about 2 series later is when he ran that draw and goes into like 2 BC defenders. He literally, I think he knocked somebody out of the game with it. But it was what am I looking for here? It was like trying to prove a point to when he went out on the sideline last time that he was trying to back himself up and say, I'm not afraid to make contact with you.
Yeah, I mean, I like that aspect. I like that we're, being more assertive. So we'll see if how we proceed with the quarterback situation, especially with what we have coming up this week. We're going to talk about it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how we handle the Wofford game. Let's talk about a little bit more on the offensive side of the ball, the pass catching. Brian, if I told you we won by 17 points, but Gallo had 1 catch and it did not come until in the second half, would you believe me last Tuesday?
Nah, not at all. Not at all. I would not have believed you, especially after what we saw with ODU and how heavily targeted he was in that game. But we had some other guys step up, right? We had Caleb in particular. One big catch down the field, had the touchdown. Connor Blumrick had a bunch of good plays. Gosnell had a couple good stick moving routes. So we saw some signs of life from the wide receiver room a little bit more this week. But we also had, a couple guys take a little step back, right? Lofton, 2 catches for -1.
And what I hated. Oh, God, I hated. It shades of that pop pass into the boundary was just, to me, I hate those plays because I think it was like on a 2nd and 5. And it was just like, no, not this is it. 2nd and 1, yeah, sure. 2nd and 5, it put us nail behind to change 3rd and 7. I just hate going any kind of sweep into the boundary. I just hate it.
I get that, but if you looked at the play, if King gets that block, he probably at least gets 2 to 3 yards, if not the first down.
Okay.
So
okay.
You got to take the bad with the good. Sometimes you got to execute, and that's one. If you execute, you at least get a positive play.
Okay.
Whether that's still a good play in your mind is kind of up to you, but there are often times where a jet sweep was a good play, but you fucking hated to see it.
Well, you hated to see it when it was like at the most. To me, it's always down and distance for those plays. Because if they aren't blocked correctly, you said it before, if those plays aren't blocked correctly, you can lose a lot of yards. You can put yourself from a good position to a bad position again, 2nd and 1, you lose 3. Okay, it's 3rd and 4. We can live another day. So it's really interesting. But you mentioned it earlier. Caleb obviously is the best receiver on the team. And him going down against ODU definitely hurt the game plan. But seeing Blumrick and Gosnell, Blumrick had 5 catches for 46 yards. He had a couple wildcat things. Actually, I think because of one of them was blown up completely, he actually ended with negative yards there. But it shows you he needs to be on the field. Gosnell with the stick movers. But now it's like, okay, we saw Gallo and Drake be a successful combo game. Actually a trio, Gallo, Drake, Dwayne, right? Along with Caleb. The second game, we see Blumrick and we see Gosnell kind of step in. So it's kind of feeling like that room's getting a little bit better overall. Now, Brian,
we know we're gonna need Caleb to be a consistent contributor.
He's got to. Caleb's got to get 50 yards.
If we can get to the point where we can mix and match behind him, that's only the better for us, because it means they can't just key on Gallo, they can't just key on Drake, they can't just key on Lofton. They've got to cover the whole field. Yeah, they've got to cover the whole field. You can get 4 or 5 guys that can do something, then that at least gives you an opportunity to really use the whole field to your advantage, because they're not just going to be able to key on 1 or 2 guys.
All right. Let me ask this, Brian. You mentioned to me that we had our most success with our intermediate stuff, that roughly 5 to 15 range. Why was that? What were they doing that sort of made that intermediate range where Grant, he was 64%. He was essentially, I think the data was 16 of 25. Why? What were they doing that forced us to play that intermediate route versus running screens? And obviously we took the one shot, but I think that was more of where the game was.
It's kind of threefold here. So number one, we had to step up in competition. They were a little bit tighter on our routes in those quick hitters.
Okay.
They were keying on that. They watched the ODU tape. So we weren't getting a ton of separation. But 2, when we saw that, I like that Bowen he's realized that we don't necessarily have guys that can consistently get separation just on their own. He's using the scheme to get guys open. And that's where a lot of those intermediate routes are really heavy in terms of the scheme. So that's why you're seeing success there.
Got it. All right, that makes sense. It'll be really interesting what we do this week against Wofford, and then obviously the West Virginia game coming up. Let's talk about a couple more things, wrap up sort of and close the book. Run game, 144 yards total. The biggest game.
I wanted 200. I wanted 200, but not bad.
We'll take it. Obviously, with some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a minute with the offensive line, I think maybe we could have gotten 200. But let's talk about the one big one. When you saw that Keyshawn King run and you saw it develop, because where it was, that was right at the 30. So you had that perfect view from the west stands down onto it right here. So I'm sure you saw everybody moving. But when you saw that pin and pull and him just go, how did it make you feel?
It was glorious. That was the best blocked play they had in the entire night. Exactly how you draw it up. What I liked, we saw Clements kind of get out there, get the kick on the outside backer. We saw JJ Rapp get a good block on the inside linebacker. But what impressed me most was Jaden Blue on this play, because he had a read where he was kind of trying to get an angle on the corner to get a block. He saw the corner, ran himself out of the play, immediately went upfield, got to the safety, got a block. King set it up for him, got to the edge, touchdown Hokies.
Yeah, they weren't going to catch Keyshawn King once he got in that open field. And I'm sure that place was rocking, because it's, long touchdown runs have been few and far between, especially last year. So, now unfortunately, Keyshawn King got banged. I think everybody's saying, like, if they would have needed him in the second half, he could have came in. This was one of those management issues. Like, if we need you, we're going to put you in, stay on the bike, stay loose. And after he goes out, Jalen Holston got most of the run after that. He ended it with 25 carries. I mean, we were running the ball a lot, but I did not realize Jalen got 25 carries, only for 60 yards. We're hearing more and more about Malachi Thomas, that he's close. He's close. He's the
Yeah,
fastest healer.
he was practicing last week. He
Oh,
wasn't doing contact, but he was practicing.
but he's needed back. And again, we've said it a couple times, and we're not trying to drag, but Malachi Thomas and Keyshawn King give you that 1-2 punch of dynamic runners. Thomas coming back too, it also gives you that opportunity to put him and King on the field at the same time and give you even more looks.
Yeah, because we saw King get split out a couple times, like I said on the the missed block, but we'll ignore that. But King has the ability out there on the edge, whereas Malachi probably is more of a backfield specific type running back. So if you can get both of those guys on the field at the same time, from time to time, I think that's going to be a good thing. And we saw what we wanted to see this week from the running game overall. We had a big play. We got some consistent yards. We weren't getting chunks, but we were we were getting some things here and there. The problem was we had a little bit of trouble on first down, where we got a little predictable, I think, in the calls on first down, and we weren't overwhelming them in the middle of that defense like I thought we could to still get some positive yards, even if they are keying on it.
All right. By the way, I'm going to take this back. Holston only had 20 carries. 20 carries for 48 yards. I was had the wrong data point up there. All right. Well, let's talk about it. Obviously, the offensive line did some good stuff this week. What's your grades overall, and then run game, pass game?
We're going with a C this week overall.
Okay.
I like the run game is a borderline C plus for me. But I think that those first down calls that I'm talking about there are what kind of held them back from kind of taking a C plus B minus range overall. Okay. You can't on first down get your shit pressed in consistently like that. Even if they know it's coming, at some point you got to have some pride and start getting some positive yards more consistently on that down. So that's a knock. But pass pro, it was better at times. And I'll qualify it this way: when they were sending 4 or they were just blitzing 1, we did a good job. When we saw it, it was pretty clear who had who pre-snap. We did a good job, much better than last week.
All right, good deal. Good deal.
When they were bringing 5 or more, we struggled.
All right. All right, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So teaser, Brian's got a few things that he feels on why we're struggling with that. Is anybody in the doghouse this week?
The whole line, because of the reason that we're talking about now.
There we
because
go.
If that doesn't improve when we get to other teams that consistently bring that type of pressure, we're going to have some problems.
Got it. So we will hit that in just a little while here. Let's flip. Let's wrap this up. Special teams, obviously a much better day. Clean snaps. Will Ross is now 3 for 3 for the year, including the 49-yarder that would have been good, like from 58. And something, if y'all haven't noticed, and I'm not getting wood, I hope I don't curse the guy. When he kicks the ball, they're down Main Street.
Yep.
Every time. Every time he kicks a field goal, he is putting it right down the middle. You're never gonna live that down ever, dude.
Call me out. I'm good for it.
Yeah, you were in the Berg. Peter Moore absolutely boomed one, got a good bouncer. Seeming like he fades at the end. I don't know if that's technique or just the air of the game. So it'll be interesting to see that. But I think the one piece I want to talk about and really talk about with you about the difference in coaching philosophies. DJ Harvey made an error. His first one of the year in special teams. Essentially, we were up and he tried to make a play.
Yep.
Good evening, Robbie Hambone Compton in Wilkesboro. He's got connection. He must be at the field house tonight.
He's got to be.
Gotta be. He makes the error because he was trying to make a play, but he didn't lose his job. He didn't get benched, and he shouldn't have.
You mean you got a young guy and you, instead of putting him in the doghouse, you coach him up and you get him back out there to do it again?
And he did it, right?
That's a novel fucking thought right there, right?
And the next time there was a punt, he went up, he got it. There was some people coming down. Maybe he could have made a play, maybe he didn't, but right?
Yeah.
But
you live, you learn.
You learn.
It's one of those things. If you're out there making consistent errors and not trying to correct it, yes, put that person in the doghouse. If they make one mistake because they're out there trying to make a play,
no, can't do that.
Coach them up and get them out there and do it again.
So it was glorious to see him go back out there. But special teams cleaned it up, and obviously penalties cleaned up. 25 penalties. And are we perfect, Brian? No, we're not perfect at all. But let me ask this. In your view, did we see the coaches and the players clean things up in one – or I should say this. The amount that we saw cleaned up, did it shock you?
We cleaned up more than I thought we would week to week. I mean, I know we talked about it when we were on here. You know, I said BC made a lot of mistakes week one. We made a ton of mistakes. We definitely had the further ground to cover in terms of getting to a clean slate. And we definitely covered a lot more than they did and made up that ground and then some. You know, again, we're not perfect. There's still a bunch of things to clean up. We got tight ends that are still missing blocks. We've got we got wide receivers that are still missing blocks. We got wide receivers that are still not able to get open without some scheme help. You know, we got things here and there on special teams that we need to clean up. There's stuff all over the field that we need to clean up, but the progress from week 1 to week 2 was really impressive. So if we can keep making those strides, and this isn't kind of one of those, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back type deals, then I think we're working with something.
Absolutely. So again, let's close the book. BC, we take the win. Hokies are now 1-1, 1-0 in ACC play. As I joked with Brian before we got on here, we control our destiny to make it to shore.
Yeah. Shout out to Truett with the 11-1 in the bio. So
there you go. There you go. All right, Brian. Let's go Hokies news notes, other college football notes. I don't know if you got in the stadium early enough, but the line of recruits, that picture, I cannot remember who put it out there. And if anybody knows, please comment so we can give them proper shout out. Whoever got that picture of the recruits lined up literally from the 50-yard line all the way back to the tunnel.
Yep.
We knew there were a lot of recruits on campus. I'm sure if you were around, I know you were around lot 1s and 2, which is near Merriman, not far from Merriman. I'm sure you saw some. That's impressive. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, you know, when you got 60 yards worth of recruits on campus for one game, and then you show out like that. Not only was Lane great, Lane is usually great on a night game. It's kind of a given. It was as advertised.
Yes, it was
Saturday night, and then you go out there and you put a performance like that, especially a defensive performance where that's what you've hung your hat on historically as well. That's big. That's big for the program. It's only going to help you in terms of moving forward with the recruiting, not just for this cycle, but for 2024 and 2025 in particular, because a lot of those kids were on campus too.
Yeah, and again, it's the piece that you talked about. It's having them there is great. You got them there, the atmosphere, but then the stadium was full. The opening shots of the stadium, there was not a gap. I think the only little gap you could see was up at the Boston College section. But sometimes they aren't given back in time where you can sell them because technically it was a sellout because, what is it? The allotment, if the allotment tickets aren't sold, you can still consider it a sellout. But I saw South had people in it still in the fourth quarter, which is just impressive. So it's love seeing that. All right. Now, when you were obviously all over tailgate scene. Of these three upsets, which one made you smile the most? App State over A&M, Marshall over Notre Dame, or Georgia Southern over Nebraska?
All right, laugh or smile?
Um, what made you laugh?
The one that made me laugh was Nebraska losing to Georgia Southern. Because I was like, all right, so he's gone.
And he was. He $7.5 million. Be damned for 3 weeks.
Yeah, we can't wait 3 weeks to save half the money. We're going to go ahead and get rid of him now.
Hear this.
The one that made me smile. The one that made me smile was App State over A&M.
Yes.
But I mean, and that let's not I've gotten a little soft spot in my heart for App State anyway. So, just absolutely cool campus. We used to practice there anytime we went down to Sewanee to play them. So they were always good to us on those road trips. So got a soft spot in my heart for App State. And then you got A&M, which is, I've said it on here before. I say it all the time. They're the UNC of the SEC.
Yes, they
are. They got talent all over the field, and they end up shitting the bed 4 to 5 times a year. And they did it again. And this, it could be a case of just not starting the right quarterback. You got Max Johnson sitting there.
They start Haynes King. Yeah,
and I don't know if a quarterback change is going to be good enough for them. But then you get the loss, and then you get the Yale stuff starting to hit the timeline. And that was in the timeline as early as Saturday, and it's kept going and kept going. So yeah, that one made me smile, but then later it made me laugh.
It made you laugh. Yeah, that one just made me do a little bit of everything because the amount of money they spent on NIL, the amount of 5-star recruit they've essentially bought,
the amount of money they paid App State to come there and lay that whooping on them,
$1.75 million. The almost $100 million they paid Jimbo, because no, it was $100 million because they bought out his Florida State contract, and they're getting nothing in return. And it just makes you understand that even in the highest level of football, there can be the teams with a lot of talent that can't do shit with it, and it kind of makes you happy.
I mean, if you wanted to win 8 or 9 games and get maybe one big victory a year, you should have just kept Sumlin.
Yes, they could have done that, but they did exact same records, same time through. All right, real quick before we head off to break here, the ACC hoop schedule was released. Obviously, a lot of good games, both Carolina and Duke at home, only Duke on the road. They sort of screwed the Hokies out the gate, though, with the UNC game, because if you look on your calendar, Brian, pull up that calendar on your computer and go down to December. December 4th is a Sunday. And my anticipation is if it's Sunday, they're probably going to put it on between 6 and 7 as to not interfere with football or try to catch the back half of football. So that sucks. But, I like the flow of the schedule because you get UNC out the gate, then BC and Wake and Clemson, then State. So it's not like there's a murderer's row section, in my opinion, anywhere in the schedule where it's like you're going to play Carolina, Duke, State, Louisville, Florida State back to back to back.
Yeah, there's like a one tough stretch where they open and close a month with UVA, but that's really that's probably the meat of the schedule.
Yep. But overall, I think the schedule's fine. It'll be interesting to see how this team plays out. Again, I just don't want to start like last year. We've got to get over that this year. Because
if we can be solid, especially in conference play. I mean, we didn't start the season awful. I think overall we had a couple losses that we wanted to have back, but as soon as we got into conference play and just dropped so many out the gate, you had to really fight to even secure your spot there, and we probably wouldn't have had it if we hadn't went down to went up to New York and won the whole fucking thing. So.
Exactly.
It's pretty wild. You don't want to put yourself in that situation again. So you got to, I think, jump on that January schedule. It'd be a lot better in January than you were last year. and be close to as good as you were in February. Because
Yeah,
you
that's
want
gonna
to.
be tough.
It's going to be tough.
That's gonna
It's
be
going to be
tough to be
tough.
as good as we were in February. The thing is, be better in January so you don't have to be almost perfect in
Well,
February.
you don't have to be perfect in February, but
There you go.
you need to be close to consistent. You need to be as
Yeah.
consistent as you want to be there, because I think we've got probably a deeper roster top to bottom than we had last year.
Yep.
I think there's more guys that were on the roster last year that are ready to be key contributors this year out the gate, and then you got guys coming in that have played big roles on other teams, and I think they're ready to kind of slide in. So if you can get acclimated in those early months of the season before you get into uh, conference play in early December, I think that's going to be what needs to happen to get the thing rolling.
Absolutely. All right, Brian. So before we get into some of our main topics tonight, we are going to take a quick pause for a message from our digital partners.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All right, Brian. So let's move on to a couple of our main topics. And tonight we're going to do Know the Enemy Wofford. We're going to do this a little different because we're not only going to do Know the Enemy, we're going to do a Know Thyself. We're a couple games in. We can talk about a few things. But with Wofford being an FCS opponent, not a lot of data on there. They are not a good team at all. They're 0-2. They haven't scored a point. And, Brian, I know you did a little reading earlier today and found some interesting stuff out on them. Shout out Treadmill Horse out there who did a little interview with Joe James of Wofford fans.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go on that because I skimmed over before I went to baseball practice, so I'll let you go on that, man.
Yeah, so again, big shout out to Treadmill Horse, treadmillhorse.com. The interview's up there with Joe James from WoffordFans.com. I guess that's the big blog. He's been running it for years. I think Joe actually lives, if I remember correctly, in Northern Virginia now. So he's in the area, but big Wofford fan, goes way back. And the head coach for Wofford is Coach Conklin, and he's on the hot seat, and he might not make it through the year. And I didn't think we were going to be talking Justin Fuente in this preview, but somehow we are, because they're kind of looking at an FCS equivalent of the Fuente regime down there at Wofford right now. I'm going to read a quote from the interview that was on there, and we'll talk about that a little more here in a second. All right, so this is the quote. "A big elephant in the room is that basically every fan at Wofford wants Josh Conklin fired. He tried to leave our program twice before we went downhill, once as a defensive coordinator position in Tennessee and once as a head coach of South Carolina, and we've been awful ever since. From our perspective, he came in, rode the coattails of Ayers' success," that's the former head coach, "saw us as a stepping stone to greener pastures, failed, and is in over his head. It's wild he hasn't been fired yet, in my opinion."
So the biggest difference, well, I guess the Baylor flirtation you put on there. At least this guy,
the Baylor flirtation. Ayers essentially is Bud Foster in this situation, where he stays around for a couple years, he modifies his offense a little bit, and then he retires.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parallels here that are just that they were too interesting not to note. And aside from the fact, I think a lot of the fan base wanted him fired at the end of last year when they went 1-11, and now they're starting the year 0-2 when they have not scored a point yet.
That is the really, really bad piece, because they have not scored a point yet. I mean, they played two decent teams in UT Chattanooga and Elon. Don't get me wrong.
Chattanooga in particular.
Chattanooga's ranked. Elon has, I think, made the tournament for a few years. But, I mean, I think I read part of that article Wofford had been to the playoffs numerous times under Ayers in the past few decades. Like a very solid football program down there. So it's like that. I mean, that's the correlation where you take a team that is used to a lot of success, have some success, and then try to move to greener pastures.
Yep.
Conklin had been the DC down at Pitt. He was a safety coach out at Tennessee. And I kind of laugh when I hear, well, I'm going to go be the head coach of South Carolina when they fired Will Muschamp. And it's like, home slice. No, you ain't got – you're coaching Wofford. I'm not trying to be crappy to Wofford. You're coaching Wofford. Now, maybe defensive coordinator to Tennessee, maybe. But, again, you're at Wofford. There's a reason you're there. Usually if you're there and you have some success, you would bump up potentially to a G5. You didn't. So – I mean, it's fascinating. I'd love to put up the message right there from Robbie. So this is our coach. This is our buddy, Coach Robbie Compton. And one of their main supporters is a Wofford alumni, and they don't like the guy. So clearly, it's reciprocated that he is not well liked amongst the Wofford community.
This is not just Joe James, talking out of
raging.
pocket.
All right. So the question is, let's talk about this team now, and let's wonder, can we hang enough points on this team to potentially get him? Or they just leave him in Blacksburg?
I mean, so I don't know if that's the case because, I mean, they're expecting to get pummeled regardless. I think
but if
that's
it's
the
so bad, though?
That's the expectation.
But if it's so bad?
When you play a bye game like this, you kind of expect to get pummeled.
Okay.
But, I mean, that offense has been abysmal through 2 weeks against FCS competition, right? They've got an inability to really effectively put together drives and to score points. They are still breaking in their new OC. So let's break that down. Let's break that down a little bit. So they had
I'm looking at the notes here, and I'm wondering, why are you even trying to do this at the FCS level?
So they had an OC under Ayers that was running the triple option. The
Makes
first
sense,
year under
FCS.
Conklin, they ran the triple option. Conklin wanted to move them away from the triple option, so their old coordinators started running more of it. He kind of modified the offense. It was more of a quasi West Coast spread RPO that was kind of getting put into place there. And the 21 season when they played in the spring, it went pretty well. And then he stepped down, and then it was a clown show last year. And then it's been a clown show so far this year. And they got a new OC this year after Conklin promoted 2 of his boys to take over the old OC's role for the start of the 2021 fall season last year. So it's been basically a comedy of errors, but so yeah, now they're more of a spread RPO type of attack versus a triple option. The offensive line struggles heavily, as you might expect from an offensive line that not only, is FCS, but was recruited to run a triple option. And they consistently shoot themselves in the foot on offense between fumbles, interceptions, missed assignments, and things like that. So they are just not a good offense to watch.
Yeah, and luckily Brian got actually to see. He was afraid he wasn't going to be able to get any tape from this year, but luckily the Elon game was on ESPN Plus over the weekend, so you actually got to see the tape. Looking through it, I was just stat diving, and I mean the stats are ugly. I mean, it's ugly, and when I say ugly on offense, y'all, I mean to a point where they are averaging, basically they have 166 total yards gained rushing the ball. They have 192 passing. They are averaging 175 yards a game.
Yeah, and I mean, you can make an argument that their running game is their strength right now.
Yeah, I mean, the fullback Walker, I mean, but that poor guy's only got 80 yards for the year. So actually, go back and think about that. One guy has accounted for a quarter of their offense.
Yeah.
One guy. And
he's put the ball on the ground 3 times.
So yeah, it's not exactly great here on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively, and I go they're playing FCS. It's not much better, is it, Brian?
It's not great, especially for FCS. I mean, they're giving up about 29 points a game. We said they're kind of playing that upper mid level FCS competition right now. They played Chattanooga, who's ranked solid team, not upper tier though,
Yep.
and Elon's kind of the upper end of that middle of the road pack there. They run a base 3-4, which is, I mean, they've ran that for a long time. That even goes back to Ayers. So that's one thing that Conklin hasn't changed. All they are a little more multiple, but they are a 3-4 base. Um, they are better on defense than on offense, like we've talked about, but they still struggle in the trenches as you would expect from an FCS team. Um, they defend the pass better than the run, but they can be influenced with the play action and misdirection in the pass game. So I think that's something that we can take advantage of. Run a lot of what we saw at ODU. I think we can get them kind of confused with the flow, and come back to the tight end on the other side. Come back to the um, you know, dig or cross or something like that. That kind of gets them away from where the flow of the play is going. Um, but yeah, it's this is a game that we should dominate on both sides of the ball and on special teams.
Absolutely. I mean, they're just not a good team whatsoever. Um, and obviously going through a ton of turmoil. I'm sure down in a small community like Wofford, those players are hearing it. So it's going to be interesting to see the outcome of this game.
Can I tell you
Now,
the most like cringe thing though?
what's
I
the
guess
most
he,
cringe?
I guess the coach does like his like weekly, um, his weekly interview, and it's like
Okay.
I can see the guy that's interviewing him is trying so hard not to completely crush this guy's hopes and dreams and keep it as positive as possible, and it hurts me so much.
How? It's like you haven't scored a point. You're giving up almost 30 a game. Ugh.
Yeah, it's one of the like he's just grasping. All right, how can I ask this question in the most positive way possible, considering that we're 0-2 and have not scored a point yet?
Not scored a point. Now we have to go to a Power Five opponent's home field. Now, lucky for them, it's an 11 o'clock game, not even 3:30. So, which
Yeah, those kids are going to get home in time to rage.
that's hilarious. All right, Brian. So there's your little background on Wofford. Uh, but let's flip what this week is really about. We've seen us through two games. We've already talked about some improvement. Let's know thyself. And Brian, as we always mention, this is an offensive lineman podcast. Let's start there. What is the biggest thing that we have to do this weekend on the Hokies offensive line versus Wofford?
For both our short and long term success on the offensive line, we need to get Xavier Chaplin and Braylon Moore some significant snaps against this competition.
What about
And
Hollyfield?
I'd throw Hollyfield in there as well.
Okay.
But I'd prefer, we got to get Chaplin and Moore. Um, you say Hollyfield because that way, if your center does go down, you got someone else that's taking live snaps.
Yeah.
That's really it. Um, but I think in terms of long term, Chaplin and Moore are probably more important because I feel like they can help us potentially this year, whereas Hollyfield is truly, unless something happens to Johnny, is a next year situation.
Okay. Um, what about push? You looked at this offensive line or this defensive line of Wofford. You said they're not good in the trenches. Is this the game where if you don't see push, do you get a little worried?
Yeah, if I don't see them reestablish the line of scrimmage um, out the gate, then that's going to be problematic for me. We got to be better on first down runs. Like I said, sometimes you just got to sack up and get some yards even when they're selling out for it. And I know they're selling out for it right now because we haven't been as consistent in the passing game as we want to
Yeah.
be. But we have been somewhat predictable on first down. But you still got to be able to get 2 yards every time you line up and run the ball, regardless of whether it's predictable. And especially against this opponent, right? So
Well,
if we're not
especially against
doing
this
that,
opponent. But you mentioned something to me. We didn't hit it on the BC because I kind of wanted to hit it here. You noticed that some of those not ugly runs where we only got 2 or 3 yards, that they were actually blocked correctly, right? And there's people were missing the lanes. I know I pulled up one somebody put out there. Can't remember who. If I could remember who, I'd let you know. But somebody put up one. It was a Jalen Holston run, and everybody's like, "Oh, terribly blocked." And you slow it down, and literally there's the lane. The lane is to the right. Yes, there's a linebacker in that hole, but isn't the job right there is you go to that hole, your job is to try to get by him, run over him. But if nothing else, there's 5 yards. If he tackles you on spot, you're going to fall forward. You're going to pick up 7 versus getting 3 or 4.
Yep. And I'll say this: Holston's biggest strength is how hard he runs. Holston's biggest weakness is his visibility. He does not have the best visibility in terms of picking the right lane. That's something he struggled with his entire career here. It hasn't gotten better, but he runs hard, and when he picks his lane, he gets as much as he can get wherever it is, even if it's not the right one.
Yeah, on that play, he got like 4 yards because he just barreled and ran as hard as he could. But when I saw that lane, it's like if you make that cut, that linebacker is going to have to meet you in the hole. Yeah. And he has to tackle you. He has to bring you down. So it's interesting. All right, we mentioned, this was the teaser from earlier. You mentioned Pass Pro had gotten significantly better against BC. You grade us as up. They went from a D, and now they're into the C categories. You said they're good with the straight-up 4-man rush. That's not the issue. But you started talking about even 5 they could handle. But if they started bringing more pressure, that's when the issues came in. Give me what your hypothesis is on this.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to communication. It looks like they are not, whether it's Wells not getting the right checks or checking into the right audibles for checkdowns. But I think it's more just the communication on the blitz across the board, because anytime there was like a 5-man pressure, 6-man pressure, they were struggling. If they didn't see where the blitz was coming from, had that guy identified in advance of the snap, there were some communication problems about who was gonna take who. A lot of times you had a guard or a tackle block no one because the communication wasn't there. So you got a free rusher. We had several where, we had 5 linemen and a running back in there to block, so we had 6 accounting for 6, but we had 2 come free. That can't happen. You've got to be able to communicate who's taking who, understand if there's any sort of twist or stunt, who's passing to who. That's got to be established pre-snap, and that communication and that feel is just not there yet. And I don't know whether it is not being communicated at the line or whether just we haven't repped enough and have the feel for those type of heavy pressures yet where we're comfortable with passing guys off or making those adjustments after the ball is snapped and we kind of see what they're actually bringing.
All right, so obviously there, and I mean, is it a week like this where that is something Rudolph can really coach, knowing this is a lesser team? If there's anything you're trying to implement with that communication or offensive coordinator talking about making the right checks, is this a week to really let's bring this to the front before we get into this stretch of games where we're playing nothing but essentially good competition from here on out?
I mean, it's definitely going to be a point of emphasis. It's probably something they talked about during the correction period on Sunday. It's probably something that they're going to work more on probably during – I don't know how they break down practice in terms of, what they work on offense, but if they have like a third down period, they're definitely going to work on that during third down period. So that's what I want to see is just some improvement. Again, I don't expect every time they bring 6 for us to pick it up. That's a big ask.
Okay.
But if we got to be more consistent than, 1 out of 8 or whatever it was
yeah.
Saturday.
Got it. All right. So there's some stuff we want to see on the offensive line. The big piece, get the young guys involved, and let's see the communication get better on blitzes. All right. Now let's talk about the skill positions. Even though we've hit it earlier, obviously we said Caleb Smith's the key to the room. It was great to see Blumrick and Gosnell get more involved this week. But of all the names we've heard, the one name we have not heard, other than his nasty downfield blocking, is Jaden Blue. How important is it to get his confidence up this week and 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 overall start thinking now we have maybe 6 reliable wide receiver targets?
Yeah, and I think what's strange is that we've done a good job of like scheming a couple other guys open, particularly Gosnell and Blumrick. I'd like to see us start working some scheme to get Blue some open touches, a chance for him to get the ball in space and let him work a little bit. Because I don't know if it's a confidence thing right now, but he's not getting good separation when he's on the field. He hasn't seen a lot of targets, and I think we need to start calling his name a little bit to get him comfortable in this offense because he's going to need to play a role in this offense, whether he ends up, playing the role that I think that a lot of us thought he could be coming into the season. That's the question, but he's going to still need to play a role for us this year, so we need to start getting him some confidence.
Yeah, it's definitely he's sort of like that. I don't want to say it's the linchpin, but I feel like he is because if you feel like if you get him going because he does have the skill set he has, it will make things easier for Caleb. It will make things easier for Connor and Gosnell, even Dwayne. Just he's like that one guy. So it's really going to be interesting to see. I hope they scheme. I hope that the game plan is, like you said, around scheming him to where he gets the ball and he feels comfortable. All right. Notice the depth chart that our friend David Cunningham put out. Did you see who was 2 on the X side?
Yeah, I saw we got Christian Moss out there.
Interested. The walk on Willie officially is no longer on the wide receiver depth. So we don't know it, but could Moss have been battling something? We had heard his name mentioned a few times. How important to get him and somebody else coming back, Jalen Jones. How important to get them on the field for a ton of reps this week?
Yeah, I mean those are the two guys we were talking about preseason of kind of being that fourth, fifth, sixth guy in the wide receiver room that we're going to need to count on to some degree this year. It's great seeing their names back on the depth chart in the 2 deep. Looking forward to seeing what they can do in some extended time. I know Moss, I think, got a little run against BC. Um, we haven't seen Jones yet, but he's back in the depth chart, so I'm looking forward to see what he can do out there this week. And this is the week that you can kind of let some of these young guys cook a little bit. I feel like because I don't think that they're going to match up that great with us outside. So I want to see us try to get some separation. I want to see us work in some young guys and get them some targets, just like we did with we talked about with Blue. I want to see at least 1 or 2 routes schemed for Moss and Jalen to kind of get the ball in their hands and make a play.
All right. What can we do as far as the tight ends go? You mentioned you were not satisfied with their blocking when they're in line or in the wing. What can we do to help? Obviously, playing our lesser opponent is a confidence builder, but what do you look for technique-wise in a game like this?
I mean, I think right now the biggest problem is that sometimes it's the assignment. They're not reading the alignment of the defense correctly, and they're missing their assignment.
Okay.
Um, so I think that's what needs to be looked at this week and corrected. Is that you got a lot of times where you're seeing Gallo chip when he shouldn't. You got him going up to the wrong backer. I mean, there's a lot of things that are just maybe just Gallo is still getting adjusted to some of the elements of the offense because we didn't see as many of these blocking snafus from him last year. But I don't know whether that's just a comfort with the offense that he had last year that he hasn't gained this year. He looks a lot better. He's picked up the passing elements quickly.
Okay.
It seems like he has not picked up the run elements of this offense as quickly.
That's interesting, especially when Gallo was known as kind of the blocking tight end last year. I mean, he got a little more of the offensive playmaker role when James Mitchell went out. So I find it interesting he hadn't picked it up that quick. But again, being asked to do different things and maybe it's just not there. Again, we've seen him catch the ball, so we know he can do that. But hopefully this week the blocking gets better because as we get again, this is sort of the one where it's like we're in the woods right now and we're about to hit the opening and we've got a lot of people in front of us we got to go through.
Yep.
All right, Brian, let's flip the defense. Let's talk a couple things on that side of the ball. Let's just go ahead and say it. With their play in the first two games, Dorian Strong and Armani Chapman have absolutely locked down the ones.
Yeah, they played well. Other than like one ball here or there, not a whole lot to shake my fist at for them. Um, Strong's had some good plays. Had the one where he got burned on that double move by Zay Flowers, but who in the ACC hasn't at one point? Chapman with the big pick to set us up to really kind of get BC off their game early, so they're locked in there. But we did see Breon Murray back from suspension this week. We saw DJ Harvey get significantly more run this week outside and in the nickel, which I think was good because it gave Harvey more confidence and it gave Strong and Chapman the opportunity to get a blow and stay fresh for longer into the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really helped as the game wore on when Murray and Harvey had been in there, getting those reps, getting those chances. But the one touchdown that BC scored, it doesn't look. I think Murray is who he is, and I don't think I think he's good for a blow. He's good situationally, but I think the next time there is a team inside the 30-yard line, I have a feeling Breon Murray won't be on the field.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about him struggling with guys with speed or size, and yeah, he does a lot better when he's able to read and react. He doesn't do a great sometimes when he's asked to run with those guys. And I'm looking for some improvement because right now it's mostly inconsistencies in technique and decision making on his part. If he can clean some of that up, he might be a little bit more reliable. But I think he's good enough, again, as you said, to kind of give those key guys a blow, especially in certain parts of the field.
Yeah, it's like he's going to be a between the 30s guy because the touchdown he gave up to Jaden Williams, I mean, as soon as you saw the lineup in the route he ran, you knew he was running a fade. And he never got around, and it was just an easy touchdown for Williams. So, but again, that's okay. At least I'm going to go back to something Price said. Know your weaknesses. Now we officially know that's Breon's weakness. It's still the weakness. Here to here, he's fine though. It's going to be like we've got to situationally get him in at the beginning of drives. So it's going to be such a key thing there. All right, Brian. Let's talk about the D line because I think if there, and we're holding them off till last because I think if there is a group that has now in multiple games at both positions, I think this group has now become pleasantly surprising, at least to me, and
Yeah,
I thank you.
yeah. I thought this group was going to be fine this year. I thought they were going to struggle depth wise, but I thought they would be fine, not much more than that. And they've really been probably outside of the linebackers, playing as well as any other group on the defense. And because we knew that we had a veteran secondary, we had a veteran linebacker core, and we had one vet and then one vet at defensive end, one vet in the D tackle room, and then a couple of other young guys that we were bringing along. We weren't really sure kind of what the D line was going to look like. We knew we had some depth concerns at D tackle because we only had three proven guys there, and they've stepped up. We've gotten some additional play out of Garbett. He played a ton of snaps against ODU and then came back and had the game of his life against
Yeah.
BC the very next week. We saw, McCray was healthy this week. He got some more run, looked good. Looks at least like he's going to be able to give us that second unit rusher that we need. And, interior, I'm going to give a big shout out to Wilfred Panay. He's improved significantly since last year. He's definitely shrunk the gap between him and those big three that we had just talked about in that room.
Yeah.
We thought there was going to be kind of a drop off, once you got past Kendricks, Pollard, and Fuga, and there isn't a significant drop off there.
Mm-mm. There's not. He's going out there. Obviously he got a half sack this week, and there were numerous times you could see him beating this guy off the snap. He's gained that weight. He was undersized last year, and now he's getting up into the 280 range. He's an athlete anyway. Yeah. I know when you looked at his tape, like, kid's an athlete, they got to figure out what to do with him. And I think that's great to see, because now that you've got 4 on that, you can continue to – and we saw that Saturday night. Man, you saw him and Kendricks, him and Fuga. You saw Fuga and Pollard. You saw Pollard and Panay. That constant rotation, which I think is something we've gotten even more excited about, because it feels like, although Brent Pry's calling the defense, I think Chris Marv is handling the rotations. I do not foresee Brent Pry handling both. And that's a good thing. And you mentioned CJ McCray. The more I see Cole Nelson, and I don't think it's next year. I think next year he is going to be a very good defensive end. I think 2 years from now, I think Cole Nelson's going to be special. You're seeing the flashes, getting the time this year. I think next year there's going to be some learning, because you've got to be the guy. I think 2024, I think that kid could be all ACC. Just what I'm seeing right now.
We'll see, man. I like his progress. I like that he's taken some steps coming into this year, because we needed it, right? Like we were
100%.
We needed somebody else to step up. I'm glad to see McCray stepping up. I'm glad to see him stepping up. I think that's going to pay dividends down the road, because we got a lot of young guys outside of Garbett that are making some plays on that defensive end position.
Absolutely. All right, y'all, before we make a prediction, let's just go with a few Hokie keys here. I think the first one, Brian, as soon as I seen Wofford didn't score again, is we cannot play down to this opponent. We need to force our will upon them.
Yeah, and that's counting on both sides. I don't think the defense is going to have a problem making plays and keeping them in check. I need to see some level of domination from the offense. And I need to see that out the gate.
Well, I think you've already said you want 250 on the ground. And I think
I want at least 250 on the ground. And then I want to get the younger guys some experience, because I feel like that is going to be the biggest thing this week. That's key number 2, is getting the young guys experience.
All over the field.
All over
the field. Every position the young guys need to play.
And I'd say specifically we got to look at the wide receiver room. We talked about that in our Know Thyself. Get those young guys out there. I want to see Brown getting some run out there. I'd like to see Devin get out there and get at least a few, couple throws and a few runs if we can.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, get some of the younger linebackers some more play. Get some of the younger guys in the safety room some more play.
What about the inside? What about the line? Do you think? Burgos and who am I missing here? Why can I not think?
Moiston.
I think they've gotten some run already. But I think we need to look at the D tackles too, because obviously, after next year, we're going to be losing to, I think, give them run. Know this.
You have get Gunner out there?
Why not? Why not for this game? Why not? Because you still have 3 games where you can still save the shirt. So I'm with you everywhere on that field.
You can unload the clip we should be up enough where you can unload the clip.
Walk-ons. All right. I think this is a real big one, and not only for the rest of the season, this is a big one for the rest of the season. We've got to continue to play clean. And when I say clean, I'm talking about the penalties.
Yeah.
I know turnovers are going to happen. You hold your hands up on that. But I don't want to see the dumb penalties again. I don't want to see the procedural stuff. We cleaned it up. Let's continue to do that for the rest of the season, because the less times we shoot ourselves in the foot, it's going to make it tougher on the other teams, especially if our defense is still going the way it's going.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is we don't have to necessarily win the turnover battle, but we can't lose it.
Yeah.
When we look at turnovers. As far as the penalties, yeah, we've got to keep it around that, 4 or 5 for 25 or 30 that we had this week versus, 15 for 110. That's a big difference. You can't give up an entire drive of an extra entire drive worth of penalties. Really 2 drives if you look at it in penalties compared to the ODU games. So that's got to be something that we keep up with. A PI here or there, a hold, sometimes that happens. But we can't get burned by almost 50 yards procedural penalties like we did against ODU. So keep that clean, keep that moving. And I think we're going to be onto something. And I'm going to say the last one here. Yeah. We need some Beamer ball this week. We need at least one defensive or special team score. They're going to give us some opportunities both in the special teams game and with that offense throwing and putting the ball on the turf. Take advantage of it and get the ball in the end zone. I mean, if we play the way I think we can, we have the potential to put up 14 to 21 just on defense and special teams alone.
Ooh, all right. Well, then if you're thinking that, what's your prediction for this game?
My prediction for this game is that the Hokies do not sleepwalk out the gate. They are solid on offense and they are spectacular on defense. It's a 41-0 win for the Hokies.
All right. I am not far. Same exact margin of victory. I say Hokies 44. I say Wofford 3. I do think they break their streak and they can average 1 point a game. But when they get their field goal, it's going to be against 6-string walk-ons in the fourth quarter. After the first half, when we put up 31 points and basically cruise home from there. So I think big wins. Do I want to see more? Yeah. I'd love to see 60. I'd love to see 63-7 or 63-3. But I think since we know the importance of mixing in a lot of the younger guys, I
think if we get up 5 or 6 touchdowns, we're going to start getting everybody else in.
Abso-freaking-lutely. All right, Brian, let's look at the big screeners this weekend. A lot of really good games going on. Ranked battle up in Oregon this week. And I'm going to take it down south. I'm going to go down to the plains of Auburn, where Brent Pry's former team goes on the road to play Auburn. Auburn has struggled in their first 2 games. They almost lost to San Jose State at Auburn last weekend. I think they won 24-16. Penn State's going in there, laying 3 points. And I think Penn State wins this game by about 10, like 31-21, because they're trying to get Brian Hartson fired down there. Let him lose. Go ahead and let him lose Penn State. They'll probably go ahead and buy him out on Sunday morning. What about you? What's yours?
My big screener is one that has a little bit of ACC flavor, a little bit of, all right, let's pile on. I've got Miami at Texas A&M. Let's keep piling on A&M while the ball's rolling right here. So right now, A&M is a 5.5 point favorite at home.
Okay.
I'm picking Miami in this one. I'm not sure if making the quarterback change is going to be what is needed, and we'll see if that's what happens this week. But there could be another acclimation period between getting a new signal caller in there and before this offense is humming like it needs to win. And when I look at Miami, they're a better quality opponent than App State in terms of the talent that they have on the field. So I don't think that A&M is quite ready for prime time again.
Okay.
Even with the quarterback change, if that's the route they go. So I think Miami takes care of business in a close one. But I'm picking Miami to not only cover, but to win the game outright.
All righty. All right, we'll write those 2 down. Brian, has anything broken in the last hour and 26 minutes.
I think we're good, man. I don't see
All
anything
right.
of import.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Sigla.
Visit our website, boundarycornervt.com, to listen to all of our episodes. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and your favorite podcast source, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. As always, we let our buddy Jason Long play us in and play us out. Check him out on his new website, jasonlongmusic.com. Can you pull that up for a second, Brian, where it will link you to all of his music on Apple and Spotify, to his YouTube pages, his Facebook pages. Where is he playing this weekend? Is he out at the farmer's market before kickoff?
Let's see. I don't see anything on his schedule until October 2nd right now.
All right, so Jason's nowhere this weekend, but check his stuff out as always. We thank you guys for always listening, and as always, let's go
Hokies!